Welcome to another episode of Let's Be Perfectly Queer. We are in part 3 now of our wrap-up series with the wonderful Frank Kewin, psychotherapist and trauma-informed coach. Frank, welcome back to the show. I appreciate you coming back on for a third visit in a row. I think it's appropriate, again, as I said on our last episode, that we're doing this given that we're in the middle of Mental Health Awareness Month, and these are important subjects to talk about. When we last met, we had just wrapped up a mini session around body image and some issues or trauma, I guess, from my childhood that we were able to work through and recognize that, you know, those aren't things that we put behind us, but that we confront and look at. And as we get older, we can look at them through a much different lens. And I know I certainly came away after our last discussion feeling much better about that photo of Fat Randy from many decades ago. So thank you for that, and welcome back to the show.
Thank you. And it's wonderful to hear that and to see you smile as you reference that photo.
Yeah, absolutely. I've thought a lot about it, and I actually did hunt through a box of old pictures to see if I could find it, but I'm almost certain that it was destroyed at one point years ago when I was not happy with that picture. So it is still alive in my memory and in my mind and won't ever go away, which now when I think of it, I definitely see it in a different light. So let's continue that conversation and again, give folks an example of what a coaching session with you looks like. And I think it's great that we're doing this in 3 parts. And initially we hadn't intended that to happen, but I think it's a good representation of what these kind of coaching and therapy sessions look like, right? There's no definitive end necessarily to it. It's like peeling an onion, right? We uncover different layers and one thing opens up another door and we walk through it and the journey continues. So we unfortunately are going to wrap things up with this episode, at least for the time being. So I will pass everything over to you to take control of the conversation.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you. Again, it's really good to be here and really good to be with those who are watching and those who are listening. We all journey. In a sense, we are all just walking each other home. Each of us has our own mental health, and our own aliveness, and also those places that need to be brought alive, that are continuously being sabotaged by our history. So one of the things that I was thinking about, and of course, in a 30-minute segment, we don't get the flavor of a whole session, but we get a slice of that cake. So I'm thinking that I will invite you, as we build on what we've done in the last 2 sessions, to consider the concept of your own inner critic. So that voice in your head that kind of sits back here and says, yeah, I don't think so. No, you're not going to do that. What do you think you are? Come on, you've failed at that so many times. You're not going to get it right this time. What do you mean? Or it might be.
I know that voice all too well.
Yes, and I think most of us have that inner critic voice inside of ourselves that at one time was a structure that was created because that was what we heard in our world, that was what we witnessed, and so we internalized that. And in a sense, it served to protect us from disappointment, to protect us from being alone with failure or imperfection or incompleteness. And that voice can continue to run in the background and sabotage how we think and feel about ourselves today.
Yeah, it keeps us from taking chances and risks, right?
Absolutely, yes. And it can really interrupt our intimate relationships and interrupt our expectations so that we end up staying in relationships that aren't functional for us, that don't work. Yes.
Yeah, you've touched a nerve there. That's at least 6 episodes alone right there. But
so we will today enter into peeling the onion a little bit around that, knowing that it's an ongoing work.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So I'm going to invite you to just take a moment to take a breath. Listen for the furthest sound that you can hear, even if that sound is silence. and to consider what are some of the phrases, the tone, the words, the occasions when your inner critic is dominating your experience. And it can be a simple thing, it can be from long, long ago, or it can be from yesterday.
Yeah, and I think you touched on a little bit when you introduced the topic, the words like, you're not good enough. You're going to fail, so why bother trying? I also, and this is something that, stems from my childhood and I still experience often today, is the idea of imposter syndrome, which had never actually come to my attention until a few years ago. And when that concept was mentioned to me as something that a lot of us suffer from, and that I certainly suffer from, and when I guess there was finally a name put to it, I understood what that meant. It's like, oh yeah, you know what? That makes sense. Because I do often feel like in the work I do now, that I'm very confident in, I feel like everyone is sort of looking at me saying, what does he know?
Right.
How is he qualified to talk on these issues and these subjects? And sometimes it gets into my head and I'm like, yeah, you know what? You're right. So I'll stay quiet. And there we go back to that isolating yourself and not putting yourself out there, not taking chances when, in the reality, when I look back on a lot of the chances that I have taken in my life, they've actually paid off tenfold. So not always, obviously.
Not always. No. Yeah. So if you can think of one specific example where this imposter voice, this imposter syndrome has been present in your head and how that feels, what's it like?
Oh, it's suffocating comes to mind, in that you're almost a drowning feeling, I guess, in that, you're trying to swim to the surface, but with every stroke, the surface gets further away. So you're doing all the work, but something in your head is telling you you're accomplishing absolutely nothing.
Okay. Yeah, those are great images. And if you can just sense into your body and locate that feeling of reaching for a surface that continually gets further away, and that sense of drowning and suffocating, how does that show up in your body as a sensation or a feeling?
Oh, I mean, clenched jaw, just a tight feeling in my body, and oftentimes that translates into stomach issues, quite honestly,
Yeah,
so
for sure. And
so it manifests into a physical reaction, not just emotional.
Yeah, I'm just reaching for my pen so that I track this. That sense of a clenched jaw, the tightness, and the stomach issue, right? Yeah. When you say the stomach issue, can you describe what that sensation is like?
Oh, like a knot in the stomach. I wouldn't go as far as saying an upset stomach, but just that tightness in the stomach.
Yeah. So as you are aware of that sensation of the tightness in the stomach, and just close your eyes for a second and visualize what that tightness in the stomach is like, and see if there's a direction to it. Is it wound clockwise? Is it wound counterclockwise? Is it wound like a web together? What's it like?
Yeah, I envision it as a clockwise sort of tying of a knot almost. It's like my intestines are wrapping around each other.
Okay. Great. And is there one specific example of when that shows up? So it could be, I was working on a project and I just had this very familiar feeling again of this imposter syndrome, the clenching in the jaw, all of that. Or I was somewhere with my partner, we were involved, something showed up like this. Or I remember a very early time in my life when I felt this for the first time. Can you think of a specific kind of example?
Yeah, I mean, I get that feeling before taping every show that I do for Let's Be Perfectly Queer, for example.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that I'm incredibly fortunate to have a platform like this and to be able to have guests like you to talk about these issues and bring them forth. But at the same time, there's this little voice in my head saying, you know, what did you do to warrant being in this position? And I was very fortunate. You know, this was an opportunity that was presented to me that, you know, I didn't really go after this opportunity. It was brought to me as, is this something that we'd be interested in having you do with us? And I certainly pitched a show concept, but yeah. And it's certainly, I don't think it's nerves, because I don't get nervous per se around doing the show. I get a little anxious when it comes to the lead up of a show and making sure I've got information on my guests that I need so that it can be a fulsome conversation. But but there's always, just before we start the recording of these episodes, it's like, you know, why, how did you get to be here, and how did you deserve this opportunity, kind of thing.
But yeah, that sense of, who are you to do this?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have a broadcasting degree, which most of my viewers, I'm sure, can clearly understand.
and I'm sure that's not why they view you, for your broadcasting degree.
Right.
That's great. That's a wonderful example. Thanks for bringing that very specific thing into the field and into our work today. So we're going to do some work to begin to unravel this, both from a cognitive place and also from a sensation and a feeling place. So if this imposter had a name, what would his name be, or her name, their name?
That's a very good question. I am a huge Batman geek. So I think when I think of these voices in my head, I automatically sort of go to the villains of the Batman mythology. So I would probably have to classify my imposter as the Joker.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just jump in and do some work with this.
Sure.
We're going to use, I mean, there are many techniques and many different modalities. And for the purposes of our time and the short frame, we're going to continue to use the tapping method that we used in the last episode.
Right.
So just take a breath. And just do what I do and repeat what I say. I'm going to use the information that you've given me, and we're going to see what arises.
Sounds good.
All right. Even though I have this part of myself.
I've had this part of myself.
The Joker.
The Joker.
From Batman.
From Batman.
And he's not funny.
And he's not funny.
In fact, he's cruel.
In fact, he's cruel.
And he sabotages my life.
And he sabotages my life.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though I have this part of myself.
Even though I have this part of myself.
That I call the Joker from Batman.
That I call the Joker from Batman.
And when he shows up.
And when he shows up.
With his, who are you?
Within this, who are you?
Who are you to do this?
Who are you to do this?
You're not qualified.
You're not qualified.
You're not as good as all the other broadcasters.
You're not as good as all the other broadcasters.
You're going to fail.
You're going to fail.
Why are you even trying?
Why are you even trying?
You don't deserve this.
You don't deserve this.
You're a fraud.
You're a fraud.
Feels horrible.
Feels horrible.
Feels all this tension in my jaw.
I feel all this tension in my jaw.
My stomach goes into a knot.
My stomach goes into a knot.
This clockwise tightness.
This clockwise tightness.
Even though I feel all of these things.
Even though I feel all of these things.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
And allow my body to relax.
And allow my body to relax.
Even though
the Joker
shows up before every episode.
The Joker shows up before every episode,
telling me a story about how I'm going to fail.
telling me a story about how I'm going to fail.
How dare I put myself out there?
How dare I put myself out there?
Fraud.
Fraud.
You're not worthy to do this.
You're not worthy to do this.
I deeply and completely accept myself.
I deeply and completely accept myself
And allow my body to relax.
and allow my body to relax.
Top of the head. All of this criticism,
All of this criticism,
all of this sabotage,
all of this sabotage,
before every show, before every show,
before every show,
this tension in my jaw,
this tension in my jaw,
this constriction in my belly,
this constriction in my belly,
this knot,
this knot,
this familiar knot in my stomach,
this familiar knot in my stomach,
this message, you're a failure.
you're a failure.
Who are you to do this?
Who are you to do this?
On the chin, you're not worthy.
You're not worthy.
You don't deserve this.
You don't deserve this.
You're not as good as everybody else.
You're not as good as everybody else.
You're going to fail.
You're going to fail.
On the collarbone, this awful feeling in my belly,
This awful feeling in my belly,
this knot
this knot,
wound tight,
wound tight,
so familiar.
so familiar.
Every time the Joker shows up
Every time the Joker shows up
with his message that isn't funny,
with his message that isn't funny,
it's cruel,
it's cruel,
it's harmful,
it's harmful,
and it sucks the energy from my life.
and it sucks the energy from my life.
This voice doesn't belong to me,
This voice doesn't belong to me,
and I'm open to the possibility
and I'm open to the possibility
that this part of myself
that this part of myself
is frightened.
is frightened.
It's really just a very, very frightened part of myself
It's really just a very, very frightened part of myself
and needs my understanding and compassion.
and needs my understanding and compassion.
There's no point getting into a bar fight with my inner critic.
There's no point in getting into a bar fight with my inner critic.
I've done that,
I have done that.
and it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
It just makes him stronger.
It just makes him stronger.
This part of myself that is afraid
This part of myself that is afraid
needs me to be compassionate,
needs me to be compassionate
to understand
and understand
that this part of myself believes
that
that
this part of myself believes
making a mistake is unbearable,
that making a mistake is unbearable,
that I will be alone.
that I will be alone.
No one will have my back.
No one will have my back.
In fact, they'll judge and criticize me the way the Joker does.
In fact, they'll judge and criticize me the way the Joker does.
I'm beginning to get it, how frightened he is,
I'm beginning to get it, how frightened he is,
how much he needs me to put my arm around his shoulder
how much he needs me to put my arm around his shoulder
and let him know that I'm here
and let him know that I'm here
and that his fear is welcome
and that his fear is welcome.
and he's not alone with it anymore.
He is not alone with it anymore.
And I can offer him compassion and understanding.
And I can offer him compassion and understanding.
But I don't have to believe what he says.
And I don't have to believe what he says.
I don't have to believe what he says at all.
I don't have to believe what he says at all.
I can hear it and understand that he's frightened.
I can hear it and understand that he's frightened.
Under the arms. That this was his way of protecting me from being disappointed.
That this was his way of protecting me from being disappointed.
After all, if I don't try, I won't fail.
After all, if I don't try, I won't fail.
On the top of the head. After all, if I don't put myself out there as I really am,
After all, if I don't put myself out there as I really am,
then no one can reject me.
then no one can reject me.
Corner of the eyebrows. He learned that hiding
He learned that hiding
not putting myself out there,
not putting myself out there,
out of the eyes, not revealing the wonderful gifts that I have,
not revealing the wonderful gifts that I have,
protected me from harm.
protected me from harm.
And there may have been a time when that was true.
And there may have been a time when that was true.
And I thank him for his service.
And I thank him for his service.
Under the chin, I just don't need to believe those messages anymore.
I just don't need to believe those messages anymore.
Those messages of shame.
Those messages of shame.
Of not being worthy.
Of not being worthy.
I'm open to the possibility.
I'm open to the possibility.
That this part of myself is frightened.
That this part of myself is frightened.
And needs me to guide him.
And needs me to guide him.
To offer him understanding.
To offer him understanding.
Empowerment.
Empowerment.
To believe in him.
Believe in him.
Well, I don't have to believe what he says or thinks.
But I don't have to believe what he says or thinks.
It's just what he says and thinks.
It's just what he says and thinks.
And when this young part of myself is afraid.
And when this young part of myself is afraid.
I can offer him comfort.
I can offer him comfort.
Now I can let him know that I will be there.
I can let him know that I will be there.
That in fact, I'm with him now.
That in fact, I'm with him now.
And it's not dependent on the outcome.
And it's not dependent on the outcome.
Frank and I could do a terrible job right now.
Frank and I could do a terrible job right now.
We could get thousands of Twitter responses and emails and Instagrams and Facebook messages letting us know just what a terrible job we did.
I'm not repeating that.
And I will still be with him.
And I will still be with him.
No matter the outcome.
No matter the outcome.
I will never leave him.
I will never leave him.
Take a breath. Take a quick look around the space that you're in for 5 different colors. And sense into this imposter, this joker, before the beginning of taping the session. Sense into those messages. And check in with yourself. What does that feel like right now in this moment?
I mean, it feels like it's important to acknowledge that, but at the same time, it has zero power over me.
Zero power over you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that there was an organic sigh that showed up after I asked you that question, that, just do that sigh again. He has zero power over me. Say that out loud. Yeah.
He has zero power over me.
Yeah. Let that sigh come again. Feel into that sigh. He has zero power over me.
Yeah, I mean, I feel my body relaxing more. I feel the tightness of my jaw has disappeared. Yeah.
And just check in, let your eyes drift towards your belly and notice what, if anything, is there now.
Yeah, there's absolutely no tightness. If anything, it's sort of a metaphorical need to fill my belly.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's and sort of on that same, that's what I feel this coaching session has done for me. It's filled me with positivity and strength and knowledge that, again, the Joker is a part of me, will always be a part of me, but is not an integral voice that I need to necessarily listen to or believe.
Yes. It's beautiful the way you say that, because our goal isn't to get rid of the Joker. And
Right.
and every time he shows up, get into the bar fight with him. No, it's not true. I really am. No, you bastard. No,
I need a POW and a band to show up on the screen.
Yes, it's very dramatic and everything, but it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's just wonderful to enter into renegotiating the relationship. And the phrase that you use, he has zero power over me. Doesn't mean that there isn't a relationship here, but the relationship has shifted.
Right.
From a power dynamic to one where you're the one who understands that this is a fearful part of yourself. You don't have to believe what he says.
Yeah, I mean, and it's wonderful to have a different perspective now on that voice, on the Joker, and have that realization that as much as he likes to speak up when I least want him to, I don't have to listen to him. And I think that's a perfect spot for us to wrap up this segment. I'm just going to pass it over to you for some quick final thoughts on what we've done, and encourage folks who are watching this episode to reach out to you as a resource. All your contact information is on the screen, and I think it's important that we've been able to show folks what a coaching session with you looks like, and take away some of that fear around reaching out and asking for help when it comes to our mental health.
Yeah, thank you. The main message that I would say is that, again, it is always the right thing to do to come to your own assistance. To recognize this part of my life isn't working for me. It's sabotaging me. And I'm wanting more. I'm wanting some freedom from this. And that freedom comes not by rejecting the unpleasant experiences of ourselves, but by embracing them and renegotiating our relationship with them, and understanding that these parts of ourselves are full of fear.
Yeah, beautifully said. I think it's important to recognize as well that, as you said, we don't have to get rid of those voices. They remain a part of us. We just learn how to harness that energy in a different form. So, Frank, thank you so much. I've really appreciated the thoughtfulness and the kid gloves that you've handled me with over these last 3 episodes. It's been incredibly insightful. I hope it's opened some doors and windows and some eyes of folks who are watching. And I do hope you will continue to tune in and watch more episodes of Let's Be Perfectly Queer. Take care, everyone. Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, Randy.